Chosen one, why has betrayal followed you like a shadow your entire life? Why do the people closest to you turn their backs just when you need them most? Why does it feel like you're fighting invisible battles that no one else can see? Stop everything and listen to me. If you've ever wondered why your life felt harder than others, why you've carried more pain, more weight, more silence, God sent me to tell you something tonight. You were never just surviving. You were being selected. Here's the shocking truth that will shatter your world. Every attack you've endured wasn't random. Every betrayal wasn't coincidence. Every moment you felt abandoned wasn't punishment, it was divine preparation. While others got comfort, you got commissioning. While they received easy paths, you were handed impossible mountains because God knew something about you that you're only now beginning to remember. You've been living under the greatest deception of your life. The enemy convinced you that your struggles meant you were cursed, that your pain proved you were forgotten, that your scars disqualified you from greatness. But that's the lie straight from hell. The truth? You weren't being destroyed. You were being developed. Every tear was liquid preparation. Every sleepless night was boot camp. Every moment you wanted to quit but didn't was God building something in you that this generation desperately needs. You've been like an arrow pulled back tight in the bow of the Almighty. You thought you were losing ground, falling behind, being punished. But you weren't losing ground, you were gaining velocity. The darker the night, the brighter the star. The deeper the wound, the greater the warrior. Before we journey deeper into this revelation together, I want to pause and thank every single one of you who has supported this message through Super Thanks. Your generosity means more than you know. You're not just donating, you're helping spread light to others who feel alone in their calling. Whether you give or not, I'm deeply grateful for your presence here. Your support, your time, your attention, it all matters. And if this message resonates with your soul, go ahead and let the Holy Spirit lead your heart. But right now, this very second, can you feel it? That stirring in your chest, that electric recognition running through your veins? That's not emotion, that's activation. That's your spirit, remembering what hell tried to make you forget. If your spirit is stirring already, comment, "I knew it." Let the enemy know you're waking up. Because tonight, I'm going to show you exactly why God waited. Why He let you walk through hell before revealing your heaven-sent assignment. Exactly why the pain didn't break you, it built you. And exactly why now, when the world wants to write you off, this is your moment to show them what a chosen one looks like when they finally remember who they are. The arrow is loaded, the target is clear, and God is about to release what He's been preparing for decades. Are you ready to discover why hell fought you so hard? Why does everyone else seem to glide through life while you've been crawling through broken glass for 70 years? Why do other families gather around holiday tables laughing while you sit alone, wondering what you did wrong? Why does success come so easily to people half your age, while every blessing you've ever received came with a price tag written in tears? Dear chosen one, I see you there. I see you in that kitchen at 2 a.m., staring at bills you can't pay with a social security check that barely covers your medication. I see you scrolling through pictures of grandchildren who rarely call, wondering if you failed as a parent, as a grandparent, as a human being. Why did everyone else seem to move on while you stayed stuck? While your high school classmates were building empires, you were building character in hospital waiting rooms. While they were climbing corporate ladders, you were climbing out of depression that felt like quicksand. While they were making memories, you were making peace with disappointment that tasted like ashes in your mouth. Why does your body feel heavy, even after 8 hours of sleep? Why do you wake up tired, like you've been carrying invisible burdens all night long? Your doctor says your blood work is fine, but something deep in your bones aches with a weight that no X-ray can capture, no pill can touch. And here's the question that cuts deepest: why? Do you still feel like a stranger in your own church? You've been attending for decades, tithing when you could barely afford groceries, serving when your back was screaming in pain. But when you sit in that pew, surrounded by people who've known you for years, Why does loneliness wrap around your shoulders like a winter coat you can't take off? You've lived like a sealed lettucent with urgent purpose, but never opened, never read, never understood. The world looks at your wrinkled hands and sees retirement, but those hands have prayed through more storms than Noah ever sailed through. They see gray hair and assume decline. But that silver crown carries wisdom that seminaries can't teach and universities can't duplicate. Listen to me carefully, precious soul. Every night you've lain awake wondering if God forgot your address. Every tear you've cried in silence thinking your prayers bounced off heaven's ceiling. Every moment you've whispered into the darkness, God, did I miss it? I need you to understand something that will shatter 40 years of lies. If you've ever whispered, God, did I miss it? Type, that was me. The delay you've experienced wasn't divine rejection. The setbacks weren't spiritual punishment. The seasons of silence weren't heaven giving you the cold shoulder. What if I told you that every closed door, every delayed answer, every season where it felt like God went on vacation, without telling you what if all of that was strategic positioning? Moses was 80 when God called him from a burning bush. 80. Abraham was 75 when he left everything familiar. Sarah was 90 when she laughed at God's promise of a child. Anna the prophetess was 84 when she finally saw the Messiah she'd been waiting for her entire adult life. Do you see the pattern? God's greatest moves always come through his most seasoned vessels. While the world worships youth, heaven honors experience. While society discards the elderly, the Almighty activates his elders. Your wrinkles aren't signs of decay, they're evidence of divine durability. Your slower pace isn't weakness, it's wisdom, walking at the speed of certainty rather than the chaos of confusion. Your scars aren't shame, they're your spiritual resume, proving you survived what would have destroyed lesser souls. But what if the delay wasn't denial? What if every year you thought was wasted was actually preparation? What if God wasn't ignoring your prayers but preparing an answer so magnificent that if it had come any sooner, it would have crushed you under its weight? The question that's been haunting you your entire life, why me, God, is about to be answered in a way that will leave you breathless. Because what I'm about to reveal next will explain why your pain was never pointless, why your struggle was never senseless, and why your story is far from over. Why have you been sitting in that same chair for the past 5 years, watching the world pass by your window? Why do your own children speak to you like you're already gone? Like your opinions don't matter anymore? Why does every birthday feel like another nail in the coffin of your dreams instead of a celebration of your purpose? Listen to me, chosen one. You've been fed the most devastating lie in modern Christianity, and it's time to expose it for what it really is: a demonic strategy to neutralize God's most dangerous weapons. They told you that 65 was your expiration date, that 70 meant you should step aside, that 80 was God's way of saying time's up. They painted pictures of rocking chairs and retirement homes, convinced you that your season of significance was over, that your voice no longer mattered, that your dreams were too late and your calling had expired. But that's not God's voice. That's the voice of limitation, and limitation has no place in the kingdom of heaven. You see, dear one, the enemy knew something about your generation that even you forgot. He knew that wisdom mixed with desperation creates the most unstoppable force on earth. He knew that when someone has nothing left to lose and everything eternal to gain, they become dangerous to the kingdom of darkness. So what did he do? He convinced you to believe the greatest lie ever told to God's people, that age equals irrelevance. But Moses didn't get started until he was 80 years old. 80. When God appeared in that burning bush, Moses wasn't a young man with energy and ambition. He was an old shepherd who'd been forgotten in the wilderness for 40 years. Yet God chose that moment, that season of his life, to hand him the most important assignment in human history. Sarah laughed at 90 because she thought it was too late for miracles. 90 years old, her womb was dead, her body was past childbearing. Logic said it was impossible. But Genesis 21:2 declares, Sarah became pregnant and bore a son to Abraham in his old age, at the very time God had promised him. At the very time, not despite her age, but because of God's perfect timing. Can you see it now? Can you feel the lie cracking under the weight of truth? Picture this. While you've been believing you're too old, God has been perfecting you. While you've been accepting invisibility, heaven has been building your authority. While you've been mourning your youth, the Almighty has been aged your wine to perfection. Those lines on your face aren't signs of decay, they're etchings of wisdom that can only be carved by time and trial. That slower pace isn't weakness. It's the measured walk of someone who's learned to move with divine timing instead of human urgency. Those quiet moments aren't emptiness, they're the sacred space where God whispers strategy to his seasoned generals. You weren't set aside, you were set apart. The nursing home isn't your destiny, it's the enemy's deception. That silent kitchen isn't evidence of abandonment, it's the prayer closet where heaven hears your intercession for a lost generation. Those unopened letters from decades past aren't symbols of what you missed. They're prophetic promises that are finally ready to be fulfilled. God doesn't retire his warriors, beloved. He reactivates them. He doesn't put his prophets on the shelf. He positions them for their finest hour. He doesn't diminish his chosen ones with age. He intensifies them with authority that can only come from walking with him through every season of life. But here's the urgency that should grip your soul right now. While you've been believing the lie of limitation, there are people dying without the wisdom you carry. There are families falling apart who need the stability you've built. There are young people drowning in confusion who desperately need to see what decades of walking with God looks like. The world doesn't need another energetic voice. It needs an experienced one. They don't need someone who talks about faith. They need someone who's lived it, tested it, proven it through decades of fire. Say this with me out loud right now. God, I'm still available. That's not a prayer. That's a declaration of war against every lie that tried to convince you your time was over. Because what I'm about to show you next will prove that your greatest assignment wasn't in your past, it's waiting in your future. Why have you spent decades feeling invisible while watching lesser people get promoted? Why does it seem like everyone else got the memo about how life works, but you've been stumbling in the dark? Why do you feel like you've been living behind a curtain that nobody else can see? Listen to me, chosen one. What I'm about to reveal will shatter everything you believed about your seasons of silence. You've been living the greatest mystery of God's kingdom, and you didn't even know it. While the world celebrated the loud, the flashy, the ones who demanded attention, something sacred was happening in the shadows. While the world promoted performers, God preserved prophets. Think about this for a moment. Every person on a platform today, every voice the world listens to, every success story they parade in front of you, they were built in public. Their victories were witnessed. Their progress was applauded. But you've been constructed in a completely different workshop. You've been built in the secret place. Let me tell you something that's going to rock your world. When God has a masterpiece to create, when heaven has a weapon to forge, when the Almighty has a vessel to prepare for impossible assignments, he doesn't do it on Main Street. He does it in the cave. He does it in the prison. He does it in the temple where nobody's watching. Look at David, anointed as a teenager to be king. But where did God send him? To caves. For years, running from Saul, hiding like a fugitive, wondering if he'd heard God wrong. The world looked at David and saw a failure. His own family thought he'd lost his mind. But God saw something different. In those caves, David wasn't being punished, he was being prepared. Every psalm of desperation, every night of terror, every moment of feeling abandoned was actually God downloading kingdom strategies into his spirit. The cave wasn't his prison, the cave was his seminary. Joseph, 17 years old, with dreams of greatness, only to be thrown into a pit by his own brothers, sold into slavery, falsely accused, forgotten in prison for years. Forgotten, can you imagine? The cupbearer promised to remember Joseph, and then nothing. 2 whole years of silence. 2 years of wondering if God had abandoned him. But here's what Joseph couldn't see. While the world forgot him, heaven was perfecting him. Every day in that prison wasn't punishment. It was preparation for managing Egypt's economy. God was building a prime minister in a prison cell. He hides what he honors. And Anno, precious Anna, 84 years old, widowed after only 7 years of marriage, spending the rest of her life in the temple. 84. The world would have called her a religious fanatic, a woman who couldn't move on, someone stuck in the past. But when baby Jesus was brought to the temple, who was the first to recognize the Messiah? Anna, the hidden one, the one nobody noticed, the one who'd been prepared in obscurity for the most important moment in human history. Do you see the pattern, beloved? Do you understand what's been happening to you? The enemy thought you were buried, but heaven knew you were planted. Every season you felt forgotten, God was actually protecting you. Every door that slammed shut was heaven saying, "Not yet. They're not ready for what I've placed inside you." Every time you felt invisible, you were actually being shielded from premature exposure that would have destroyed the very thing God was building. You think you missed your moment. You think your time has passed. You think God gave up on you because you're older now, because the world has labeled you irrelevant. That's not abandonment. That's preparation completion. See, the enemy's greatest fear isn't your talent, it's your timing. He knows that when God finally says, now, when heaven finally says, it's time, what emerges from your season of hiddenness will be so powerful, so anointed, so unstoppable that hell itself will tremble. This is why your life has felt like a mystery even to yourself. This is why you've carried dreams that seemed impossible. This is why you've felt called to things that made no logical sense. You weren't crazy. You were coded with assignment that required decades of secret preparation. The world measures readiness by resumes. God measures readiness by refinement. The world promotes based on networking. Heaven elevates based on character forged in fire. The world wants immediate results. God demands éternel impact. Right now, across America, across the globe, something is shifting in the spirit realm. The season of hiding is ending. The time of concealment is over. God is calling his hidden ones out of the caves, out of the prisons, out of the temples where they've been faithfully serving in silence. But here's what's going to shock you. When you emerge from your season of hiddenness, you won't emerge empty-handed. You'll emerge carrying authority that can only be forged in secret places. You'll emerge with wisdom that can only be gained through walking with God when nobody else is watching. You'll emerge with supernatural strength that can only be developed through depending on heaven when earth offers no help. Comment: I was hidden for a reason. If something in you already knows this is true, because what's about to happen next will require every ounce of character you've built in the darkness, every lesson you've learned in the silence, every moment of faithfulness when it felt like nobody cared. The hidden season is ending. Chosen one. But the revealing season, that's about to begin with such force that the world won't know what hit them. The question that will determine everything is this: when God calls you out of hiding, will you be ready to let the world see what he's been building in secret? Listen to me carefully, chosen one. Something massive has shifted in the spiritual realm over your life, and you can feel it, can't you? Your address didn't change. Your bank account looks the same. Your family situation appears identical, but something fundamental has altered in the atmosphere around you, and you're wondering if you're losing your mind or finally finding it. You're not imagining it. Your season just changed. For decades, you've been like old oil sitting in a lamp, functional, faithful, burning, steady but dim. You've illuminated small corners, warmed tiny spaces, given just enough light to get by. But God never intended for you to burn low forever. He's been waiting for this exact moment to drain out the old oil that's been contaminated by disappointment, diluted by delay, and polluted by other people's opinions of your worth. Listen, you hear that sound? That's the old oil being drained. Every limitation that told you that you were too old, too late, too broken. Every voice that convinced you that your best days were behind you. Every lie that whispered you missed your moment. It's all draining out right now to make room for something that will burn so bright, so pure, so powerful that darkness will flee from neighborhoods you haven't even visited yet. Isaiah 43:19 declares, "Behold, I do a new thing. Now it shall spring forth. Shall ye not know it?" But here's what most people miss. God doesn't do new things with old mindsets. He doesn't pour fresh oil into contaminated vessels. The draining had to happen first. Why has your life felt so empty lately? Why have relationships fallen away? Why do old interests feel stale? Because God has been creating sacred space for something unprecedented. You thought you were losing yourself, but you were actually being prepared to find the version of you that's been waiting in the wings of eternity. But let me tell you what's really happening in the invisible realm while you've been feeling this shift. Hell is in panic mode. The enemy has been watching you for decades, convinced he had you neutralized, contained, convinced that you'd accepted a life of quiet insignificance. He thought the oil in your lamp was permanently dimmed. But then something happened that sent shockwaves through the kingdom of darkness. God spoke your name in the councils of heaven, and demons who thought you were finished suddenly realized you're just getting started. The warfare has intensified lately, hasn't it? The attacks on your peace, your health, your family, your finances. You thought that was evidence you were failing. But it's evidence you're rising. The enemy doesn't waste ammunition on empty targets. He reserves his fiercest assaults for those carrying the most dangerous anointing. You see, chosen one, God didn't choose you to entertain. He chose you to interrupt darkness. While others were called to comfort the afflicted, you were called to afflict the comfortable. While others were assigned to maintain order, you were commissioned to cause holy disruption. Think about Jesus walking into that temple in Matthew 21:12. The religious leaders had turned God's house into a marketplace. And what did Jesus do? He didn't politely ask them to reconsider. He didn't schedule a committee meeting. He overturned tables. He drove out those who were defiling sacred space. He interrupted their system with righteous rage. That same spirit of holy interruption is rising in you right now. You're going to walk into situations where injustice has made itself comfortable, where lies have settled in like they own the place, where hopelessness has convinced people it's permanent. And your very presence, your words, your prayers, your refusal to accept what everyone else calls normal is going to overturn tables. But here's what's going to shock you about this new season. The very qualities that made you feel like an outsider are about to make you invaluable. Your inability to tolerate shallow conversation, that's prophetic discernment. Your discomfort with surface-level relationships, that's deep calling to deep. Your refusal to celebrate what doesn't deserve celebration, that's righteous judgment. Romans 8:19 says, "For the earnest expectation of the creature waiteth for the manifestation of the sons of God." Creation itself has been waiting for you to step into this new dimension of your calling. The ground beneath your feet recognizes the shift. The atmosphere around you acknowledges the change. Even your enemies sense that something has altered in your spiritual frequency. The silence you've endured for years wasn't punishment, beloved. It was preparation for your public assignment. God has been developing your voice in the secret place because what He's about to ask you to speak requires authority that can only be forged in the furnace of waiting. Every year you spent feeling invisible was actually God making you invincible. David spent years in caves before he touched the throne. Joseph rotted in prison before he ruled Egypt. Moses wandered in wilderness before he split seas. Your hiding season is over because your assignment is about to go public. You're about to walk into rooms where your very presence shifts the spiritual climate. You're going to speak words that break generational curses. You're going to pray prayers that move mountains. Not because you're special, but because you've been specifically prepared for such a time as this. Say it now. I'm stepping out of hiding. That's not hype. That's holy. That's not motivation. That's manifestation. That's your spirit agreeing with what heaven has already decreed over your life. But stepping out of hiding requires courage that most people never develop. It demands that you stop apologizing for your calling and start walking in it. It means you can no longer blend in when God created you to stand out. Are you ready to discover exactly what you're stepping into and why the world has been waiting for someone exactly like you? Listen to me, beloved. Something has shifted in the spiritual atmosphere around your life, and I need you to pay attention to what's been happening to you lately. Have you noticed the way people look at you differently now? the way conversations pause when you enter a room, the way strangers find themselves drawn to you without explanation. That's not coincidence. That's the revealing beginning. You see, dear one, for decades you've been walking around thinking you were ordinary, just another face in the crowd, just another senior citizen the world has forgotten. But let me tell you something that's going to shake you to your core. God doesn't mark ordinary people with his presence the way he's marked you. Think about this. When was the last time you walked into a hospital waiting room and somehow, without saying a word, the anxious mother next to you started pouring out her heart? When did the grocery store clerk last look into your eyes and suddenly confess fears they've never told anyone? When did your own grandchildren last say, "There's something different about you, Grandma"? Something peaceful. You thought that was just you being a good listener. But that's not human charisma, chosen one. That's divine oil. You carry the presence of the Almighty so thick that people's spirits recognize it before their minds can comprehend it. The way peace follows you into chaos. That's not personality, that's anointing. The way broken people gravitate toward you like moths to flame. That's not accident, that's assignment. You've been wondering why you feel so different from everyone else your age, why you can't relate to their small talk about grandchildren and retirement cruises, why your heart burns with purpose when theirs have settled into routine. It's because you're not like them. You never were. Look at what Scripture tells us in 1 Samuel 16-7. The Lord does not look at the things people look at. People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. While the world sees your age, God sees your authority. While they count your years, he measures your oil. While they calculate your limitations, he activates your limitless calling. But here's what's going to shock you. Here's what the enemy has been desperately trying to hide from you. Every person who has been inexplicably drawn to your presence, every stranger who has confessed their deepest pain to you, every moment when your words brought peace to chaos, that wasn't random. That was God giving you a preview of what's coming. You've been carrying healing in your hands without even knowing it. You've been speaking life into dead situations while thinking you were just being encouraging. You've been demonstrating the love of Christ while believing you were just being kind. Do you remember the woman at the well in John chapter 4? She met Jesus for just a few minutes, but something in his presence transformed her so completely that she ran back to town and brought the entire city to meet him. One encounter with divine presence changed everything. That same presence that flowed through Jesus, Romans 8:11 says it lives in you. The same Spirit that raised Christ from the dead is dwelling in your mortal body right now. But let me ask you something that might cut deep. How many times have you dismissed what God was doing through you? How many times have you said, "Oh, it was nothing," when someone thanked you for changing their life? How many times have you attributed to luck what was actually the favor of the Almighty moving through your surrendered heart? You've been operating in gifts you didn't even know you possessed. You've been walking in authority you never claimed. You've been carrying oil you never acknowledged. But God has been taking notes. Every act of love, every word of encouragement, every prayer whispered in secret, he's been recording it all, preparing to magnify it beyond your wildest imagination. Isaiah 49:16 declares something so beautiful it should make you weep. See, I have engraved you on the palms of my hands, not written in pencil, not typed on a computer, engraved, carved deep, permanent, unchangeable. You weren't forgotten, precious one. You were engraved on the very hands that spoke worlds into existence. And here's why this matters more than you realize. Every time Jesus lifts his hands to bless, he sees your name. Every time he reaches out to heal, your name is right there. Every time he intercedes for you at the right hand of the Father, he's looking at your name carved into his flesh. The God of the universe has your name tattooed on his hands, and you've been worried about whether he remembers you. But there's something else happening right now that you need to understand. The reason people are starting to see you differently, the reason your presence carries more weight than it used to, the reason your words land with authority you never felt before, it's because the revealing has begun. For years, God has been preparing you in private. Every trial was training, every setback was set up. Every moment of feeling invisible was God positioning you for maximum impact when He decided to unveil what He's been building. And in a moment, I'm going to show you what God is about to do through you, and why now, when the world wants to write you off because of your age, is precisely when heaven is writing you in as the answer to prayers you didn't even know were being prayed. But first, you need to understand something that will change how you see every day for the rest of your life. You're not just living your final chapter. You're writing the legacy that will echo through eternity. The question that will determine everything is this: are you ready to stop hiding what God has been revealing? Listen to me carefully, chosen one. I need you to stop running from the very thing that makes you powerful. For 70, 80, maybe 90 years, you've been carrying shame about your scars. You've been apologizing for your limp. You've been hiding your wounds like they're evidence of some cosmic mistake. But what if I told you that everything you've been ashamed of is exactly what qualifies you for the throne? You see, the world taught you that scars are ugly, that broken people can't be used by God, that your depression, your divorce, your addiction, your betrayal, that these things disqualified you from greatness. But that's the greatest lie ever whispered in your ear. God didn't choose you in spite of your wounds. He chose you because of them. Think about this and let it sink deep into your bones. When Jesus rose from the dead, when He had the power to appear however He wanted, what did He choose to keep? His scars, those nail prints in His hands, that wound in His side. He could have erased every mark of suffering, but He didn't. Why? Because His scars weren't His shame, they were His credentials. Thomas said in John 20:25, "Unless I see the nail marks in His hands, I will not believe." Your scars, beloved, aren't your disqualification. They're your identification. They're proof that you've been where hell tried to drag you and you survived. But here's where it gets deeper. Here's where heaven's strategy becomes clear. Your limp, your loss, your loneliness, it didn't disqualify you. It qualified you. You didn't just survive. You were forged. Every widow in this audience who's cried herself to sleep for the past 5 years, you think that loneliness is your weakness. No. That empty chair across from you at dinner has been teaching you to depend on God in ways that married people will never understand. Your solitude has become your sanctuary. Your isolation has become your incubation. Every grandfather watching this who lost his business, who felt like a failure because he couldn't provide the way he dreamed, that bankruptcy wasn't your breakdown. It was your breakthrough from trusting in money to trusting in the Almighty. Proverbs 11:28 says, "Those who trust in their riches will fall, but the righteous will thrive like a green leaf." Every grandmother who raised children who broke your heart, who walked away, who chose drugs over family, that rejection wasn't evidence that you failed as a mother. It was training for you to become a spiritual mother to orphaned souls who need someone who understands abandonment. You've been looking at your wounds like they're your weakness, but God has been looking at them like they're your weapons. The enemy made one fatal miscalculation. He thought if he wounded you deep enough, you'd never rise again. But what he didn't understand is this: when you wound a chosen one, you don't break them, you break them open. And when chosen ones break open, light pours out. That depression that almost killed you in your 60s, it gave you compassion for souls drowning in darkness. That heart attack that terrified you at 72, it taught you that every heartbeat is a gift from God. That diagnosis that shook your world, it made you realize that this world isn't your home, you're just passing through. The enemy wasn't afraid of your past. He was terrified of your persistence, because persistence is the proof of purpose. Why do you think you're still here? Why didn't that suicide attempt work 20 years ago? Why didn't that overdose take you out? Why didn't that cancer have the final word? Because heaven has an assignment with your name on it, and hell cannot kill what God has commissioned. You think you're just getting older, but you're getting more anointed. You think you're slowing down, but you're building up spiritual pressure. Every year you've lived, every battle you've fought, every mountain you've climbed has been adding authority to your voice and power to your presence. The young pastor can preach about faith, but you've lived it. The seminary graduate can teach about suffering, but you've survived it. The best-selling author can write about perseverance, but you've personified it. This is why your prayers carry more weight now than they ever have. This is why your words cut straight to the heart. This is why people half your age seek your counsel. You're not operating on book knowledge, you're operating on battlefield experience. Say this with me: my scars are my crown. Don't whisper it, declare it. Let every demon that tried to destroy you hear the roar of someone who refused to stay down. Let every person who counted you out witness the resurrection of someone who was buried alive but rose anyway. Your scars aren't your story's end, they're your ministry's beginning. And what God is about to do through your wounded, weathered, wonderful life will leave this world speechless. But the question that will determine everything is this: will you finally stop hiding your scars and start wearing your crown? Because the world is waiting to see what happens when a chosen one remembers that their greatest wounds have become their wings. Look at yourself right now. Really look. You're sitting there thinking your best days are behind you. 70 years old, maybe 80, maybe 90, and the world has convinced you that your time has passed, that your voice doesn't matter anymore, that God's done with people like you. But what if I told you something that would shatter that lie into a million pieces? What if I told you that this moment right now, at this exact age, with all your scars and all your stories, what if this is precisely when God planned to use you most? You see, dear chosen one, there's something happening in America right now that most people can't see. This generation, your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren, they're drowning in confusion, in darkness, in a flood of lies that's rising faster than anyone can handle. They've got all the technology in the world, but they've lost their souls. They can connect to anyone on earth, but they can't connect to themselves. They can Google any fact, but they can't find truth. And God is looking down at this mess, this spiritual wasteland, and He's asking one question: who do I have that's been tested enough to speak into this chaos? Who has I refined long enough to handle this assignment? Who carries the weight of wisdom that only comes from walking through hell and choosing heaven anyway? His answer: you. You carry the wisdom this generation is starving for, the depth they never developed. While they were collecting likes, you were collecting life lessons. While they were building platforms, you were building character. While they were chasing trends, you were chasing truth. Think about it. When this country was being built, who did the heavy lifting? Your generation. When wars needed to be won, who stood in the gap? Your generation. When families needed to be held together through the Great Depression, through World War II, through decades of uncertainty, who carried that weight? Your generation. And now, when America is facing its greatest spiritual crisis, when darkness is flooding our streets and our schools and our homes, God is calling the same generation that saved this nation before to save it again. But here's what breaks my heart. Here's what makes me weep for what we've lost. The enemy has spent the last 20 years convincing you that your time is over, that your voice is too old, your methods are outdated, your wisdom is irrelevant. He's put you in nursing homes and told you to be quiet. He's shuffled you to the sidelines and told you to watch while others take the field. But that was never God's plan. This isn't your ending, beloved. This is the part of the movie where the veteran steps into the battlefield one last time and changes everything. This is the moment when the old warrior picks up his sword, looks at the young soldiers trembling in fear, and says, "Step aside, son. Let me show you how this is done." Heaven didn't write you out of the story. He was saving you for the final scene. You think it's coincidence that you're still here. You think it's luck that you survived everything that tried to kill you. That heart attack at 65, you should have died. That diagnosis the doctors said was terminal, you should have been gone. That depression that nearly took you under, you should have given up. But you didn't. You're still here, still breathing, still believing. And there's only one reason for that. God's not done with you yet. Moses was 80 when God called him to his greatest assignment. 80. The world would have put him in a retirement home, but God put him in front of Pharaoh. Sarah was 90 when she gave birth to the promise. 90. The world said she was finished, but God said she was just beginning. Caleb was 85 when he said, "Give me this mountain. Not give me a rocking chair, give me this mountain. Your age isn't your limitation, it's your qualification. Your scars aren't your disqualification, they're your credentials. Your years aren't counting down, they're adding up to this moment when God says, now. Now is when I need what you carry. And what do you carry, chosen one? You carry something this generation has never seen. You carry tested faith. You carry proven love. You carry the kind of hope that doesn't come from having it easy, it comes from having it hard and choosing to trust God anyway. You've seen America when it was strong. You remember when families prayed together, when communities looked out for each other, when people knew right from wrong without having to Google it. You carry the DNA of what this nation used to be and what it can be again. But here's the big reveal that's going to shock you to your core. Are you ready for this? The reason the warfare was so heavy in your life, the reason the attacks were so vicious, the betrayals so deep, the pain so intense, wasn't because you were weak, it was because you are heavy with glory. You are what the enemy feared would rise. Hell knew something about your destiny that you're only now beginning to understand. Every demon that came against you, every scheme that tried to destroy you, every weapon that was formed against you, they weren't random attacks. They were strategic strikes against someone carrying kingdom authority. You survived because you're still sent. You endured because you're still needed. You're here because this generation needs to see what it looks like when someone who's been through the fire comes out singing God's praises. The young ones need to see your faith. They need to witness your strength. They need to hear your stories of God's faithfulness through decades of testing. They need to know that it's possible to go through hell and come out worshiping. This is your moment, not your final moment, your finest moment. The moment when everything you've learned, everything you've suffered, everything you've overcome becomes the very thing God uses to shift this nation. If you're ready to accept the reason God preserved you, if you're ready to stop hiding in the background and step into the foreground of His purpose, if you're ready to show this generation what a chosen one looks like when they finally remember who they are, comment, I accept the mission, not tomorrow, not when you feel ready, now, because the battlefield is waiting, the harvest is ready, and God is calling His seasoned warriors to the front lines one more time. Are you ready to show the world why He chose you? You think you've been forgotten, but the earth remembers you. Listen to me carefully, chosen one. While you've been sitting in that empty house, staring at those same four walls, wondering if your life even matters anymore, something extraordinary has been happening. The very ground beneath your feet has been trembling with anticipation. The trees outside your window have been leaning in, waiting. The wind that brushes against your face carries whispers from heaven itself. You thought the world moved on without you. You thought your season passed. You thought God forgot your address while blessing everyone else's mailbox. But here's the revelation that's going to shatter every lie you've believed about your significance. Creation itself has been holding its breath, waiting for you to remember who you are. Romans 8:19 declares with thunderous authority, "For the creation waits in eager expectation for the children of God to be revealed." Did you catch that? Eager expectation, not passive waiting, not disappointed resignation. Eager expectation. The mountains, the rivers, the very atoms that hold this universe together are on the edge of their seats, waiting for the moment when you finally step into your true identity. But why would creation care about you? Why would the earth itself be invested in your awakening? Because, dear one, you weren't just born into this world, you were sent into it. You carry something in your DNA that this dying planet desperately needs. You are not just flesh and blood walking on dirt. You are heaven's ambassador walking on holy ground that recognizes the authority in your footsteps. The ground beneath your feet has been waiting to respond to your footsteps. Think about this for a moment. When Moses approached the burning bush, what did God say? Take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy ground. Moses didn't make the ground holy. The ground was holy because of who was walking on it. And right now, sitting in your living room, lying in your bed, standing in your kitchen, that ground is holy because you are on it. You've spent decades thinking you were ordinary, haven't you? Walking through grocery stores, sitting in doctor's offices, attending church services, believing you were just another face in the crowd. But the angels assigned to you know differently. They see what you carry. They see the glory wrapped in human flesh. They see the divine assignment disguised as an elderly person that the world has written off. How many times have you felt invisible? How many times have you walked into a room and felt like no one noticed you were there? How many conversations have you tried to join, only to feel like your words evaporated into thin air? The world taught you that invisibility meant irrelevance, but God says your invisibility was protection. While the enemy was scanning the earth looking for threats to his kingdom, you were hidden in plain sight, camouflaged by age, disguised by ordinariness, concealed by the very assumptions society makes about seniors. The devil thought you were neutralized, but God was positioning you. The world isn't rejecting you, it's waiting for you. Listen to what's really happening around you. Have you noticed how animals respond to you differently? How babies stop crying when you hold them? How strangers find themselves telling you their deepest secrets in checkout lines? How your presence changes the atmosphere in rooms without you saying a word? That's not coincidence, that's recognition. Creation recognizes the divine frequency you carry. You think your best years are behind you, but creation knows your most powerful years are just beginning. While your body shows the wear of decades, your spirit is reaching full maturity. While the world sees wrinkles and limitations, heaven sees wisdom and unlimited potential. While society whispers about decline, creation roars about divine appointment. Heaven isn't silent, it's staging your return. Have you felt it lately? That stirring in the atmosphere around you? That sense that something monumental is shifting? Dreams that feel more real than reality? Encounters that seem too meaningful to be random? That's not your imagination. That's heaven orchestrating your emergence from the shadows. For years, you've been like a seed buried deep in the earth. The darkness wasn't punishment, it was germination. The pressure wasn't meant to crush you, it was meant to activate you. And now, after decades of hidden growth, something is breaking through the soil of your circumstances, something the world has never seen before. But here's what the enemy doesn't want you to understand. Recognition is a two-way street. When heaven recognizes you, hell recognizes you too. This is why the spiritual warfare has intensified around your life lately. This is why relationships have become more complicated. This is why you felt attacked on multiple fronts. The kingdom of darkness knows what's awakening in you, and they're terrified. You see, demons don't waste time on powerless people. Satan doesn't deploy his best weapons against irrelevant targets. The very fact that you've been under such intense spiritual assault is proof of the authority you carry. They're not attacking you because you're weak, they're attacking you because you're dangerous. But their attacks have only served to strengthen what God planted in you. Every betrayal built your discernment. Every financial struggle taught you divine provision. Every health battle proved your supernatural endurance. Every night you cried yourself to sleep, you were unknowingly watering the seeds of your destiny. And now creation itself is preparing for your unveiling. Whisper this: I've been recognized. Because when heaven recognizes you, so does hell. Feel that shift in your chest as those words leave your lips. That's not emotion, that's activation. That's the universe responding to your declaration. The very atoms around you are rearranging themselves in response to your awakening. The spiritual atmosphere is shifting. Angels are taking new positions. Demons are retreating to report what they've witnessed. You thought you were just an elderly person trying to make it through another day, but you're actually a spiritual nuclear reactor that's been dormant for decades, and God is about to flip the switch. You thought you were fading into the background, but you're actually coming into the foreground of the greatest move of God this generation has ever seen. The earth remembers you because you were here before, not in this body, not in this lifetime, but in the councils of heaven before time began. You were there when the blueprints for this age were drawn. You were there when your assignment was written. You were there when God said, "For such a time as this, I need someone who can handle the weight of glory disguised as the weight of years." Creation recognizes you because you carry the frequency of eternity in your mortal frame. You are a walking portal between heaven and earth. You are a living bridge between what is and what could be. You are a breathing prophecy of God's faithfulness across generations. But recognition without response is just revelation without revolution. The question burning in the atmosphere around you right now is this: now that you know the earth recognizes you, will you finally recognize yourself? Because what happens next depends entirely on whether you're ready to stop hiding behind the limitations others placed on you and start walking in the limitless authority God placed in you. The earth is waiting. Creation is expecting. Heaven is preparing. And the enemy? The enemy is about to discover what happens when a chosen one finally remembers why hell fought them so hard. Let's talk about why life's been so hard for you. Why did the enemy come for you when you were just 7 years old? Why the abuse that no child should ever endure? Why the betrayal from the very people who were supposed to protect you? Why the near-death breakdowns that left you gasping for air in hospital beds, wondering if God had finally given up on you? I need you to sit back and really think about this, chosen one. While other kids were playing on playgrounds, you were learning to survive in war zones. While other teenagers were worried about prom dates, you were fighting demons in your bedroom. While other young adults were building careers, you were rebuilding yourself from ashes that kept falling. But here's the revelation that's going to shatter everything you thought you knew about your pain. That warfare wasn't random, it was recognition. The enemy doesn't waste ammunition on empty targets. Satan doesn't deploy his most vicious demons against people who pose no threat to his kingdom. Hell doesn't orchestrate systematic attacks against ordinary individuals. But you've been in the crosshairs since day one, because the forces of darkness saw something that you're just now beginning to remember. You're carrying what they can't counterfeit. Think about this for a moment. Job wasn't attacked because he was weak, he was attacked because he was righteous. Daniel wasn't thrown to the lions because he was insignificant, he was thrown to the lions because his prayers were changing the spiritual atmosphere of an entire empire. David wasn't hunted by King Saul because he was harmless, was hunted because Saul could sense the anointing of a future king. You're not a threat because of your voice. You're a threat because of your silence. All those years when you thought you were failing, when you thought you were falling behind, when you thought God had forgotten your name, you were actually in the most dangerous place you could be to the kingdom of darkness. You were in the place of surrender, the place of brokenness, the place where pride dies and power is born. You've been like a nuclear reactor hidden in a small-town chapel. From the outside, people saw an ordinary person going through ordinary struggles. They saw someone who couldn't keep their life together, someone who seemed cursed, someone who attracted trouble like a magnet. But what they couldn't see was the spiritual energy building inside you, the nuclear-level power that comes only from being refined in the furnace of affliction. 1 Peter 4:12 says, "Beloved, do not be surprised at the fiery trial when it comes upon you to test you, as though something strange were happening to you." Strange? No, chosen one. Expected. This is what happens when heaven marks someone for assignments that require supernatural strength. Let me ask you something that's going to cut deep. How many times should you have died but didn't? How many overdoses should have been fatal? How many accidents should have taken you out? How many moments of despair should have been your last? Count them. Go ahead, count them. That wasn't luck. That wasn't coincidence. That was divine intervention protecting what the enemy was trying to destroy. The depression was a disguise. While you thought you were losing your mind, God was actually downloading spiritual intelligence that could only be received in the darkness. The midnight hours when you couldn't sleep weren't insomnia, they were intercession. Your tears weren't weakness, they were weapons being forged in the secret place. The delay was the decoy. While the enemy thought he was keeping you from your destiny by delaying your breakthrough, God was actually using that time to build the character you'd need to handle the authority he was preparing to release through you. Moses spent 40 years in the wilderness before he split the Red Sea. Joseph spent years in prison before he ruled Egypt. Your delay wasn't denial, it was development. The breakdown was the birthplace. Every time you shattered into a million pieces, every time you thought you couldn't go on, every time you cried out, God, I can't take any more. That wasn't your ending. That was your beginning. Because breakdown precedes breakthrough. Death precedes resurrection. The grave precedes the glory. Romans 8:28 declares with thunderous authority, "And we know that all things work together for good, to them that love God, to them who are the called according to his purpose." All things, not some things, not just the good things, all things, including the abuse, including the betrayal, including the nights you wanted to die. The enemy made one fatal mistake. He showed his hand too early. By attacking you so viciously, he revealed that you're carrying something he desperately wants to stop. Every suicide attempt you survived was proof that hell cannot kill what heaven has anointed. Every time you got back up when staying down would have been easier was evidence that you're operating on supernatural strength. You know why the warfare was so intense? Because the calling is massive. You know why the attacks were so personal? Because the anointing is powerful. You know why the pain was so deep? Because the purpose is profound. Right now, some of you are feeling something stirring in your chest that you haven't felt in years. That's not emotion, that's recognition. Your spirit is remembering what trauma tried to make you forget. You weren't surviving random attacks. You were withstanding strategic warfare designed to stop what God is about to release through you. Say this out loud right now. I survived because I'm still sent. Did you feel that shift in the atmosphere when you spoke those words? That's hell backing down and heaven advancing. Because when you finally understand that your pain was preparation, when you realize that your scars are your credentials, when you discover that your warfare was actually proof of your worth, everything changes. But here's what's about to happen next, and this is why the enemy is terrified. You're about to step into an authority that's been forged in the fires of hell itself. And when someone who's been tested by fire finally remembers who they are, kingdoms shake. The question that will determine everything is this. Now that you know the warfare was proof, what are you going to do with the weapon it created? Listen to me, chosen one. I need you to stop running from the truth that's been chasing you your entire life. You think you're just another link in a broken chain, don't you? You think you're destined to repeat the same painful patterns that have haunted your family for generations. But what if I told you that everything you've believed about your bloodline is a lie? You're not here to continue the cycle. You're here to shatter it. Your bloodline's been plagued with addiction. Alcoholism passed down like a cursed inheritance from grandfather to father to son. Depression that visits every generation like an unwelcome relative who never leaves. You're the interruption. Divorce haunted every generation before you. Broken marriages scattered across your family tree like fallen leaves. Hearts that couldn't stay whole, love that couldn't last, commitment that crumbled under pressure. You're the interruption. Financial ruin that follows your family name. Bankruptcy, foreclosure, always one paycheck away from disaster. Poverty that clung to your ancestors like mud they could never wash off. You're the interruption. Shame tried to rewrite your story. Secrets whispered behind closed doors. Scandals that made your family name something to hide rather than honor. Embarrassment that made you want to change your last name. You're the interruption. But here's what hell doesn't want you to understand. Here's the revelation that makes demons tremble. You weren't born into this mess by accident. You were strategically positioned by the Almighty himself. Think about Rahab, a prostitute, a woman whose very name was synonymous with shame. But when Joshua's spies needed shelter, when God needed someone willing to risk everything for faith, who did he choose? The woman the world had written off. And she didn't just escape Jericho's destruction, she became part of the bloodline of Jesus Christ himself. Matthew 1-5 records it for eternity. Rahab, the harlot, became Rahab, the ancestor of the Messiah. One woman's courage interrupted an entire lineage of shame. You see, beloved, the enemy has been studying your family tree for generations. He's been planting seeds of destruction, watering roots of rebellion, cultivating crops of chaos. But what Satan didn't count on was this. God was planting something too, something deeper, something stronger, something that would lay dormant until the appointed time. You are that seed. Every pain you've endured, every betrayal you've survived, every moment you wanted to give up, But it wasn't just building your character, it was building your authority. The authority to stand up and declare, "Not in my generation, not on my watch, not anymore." Look at Moses, born into a family of slaves, raised in a palace built on Hebrew blood and tears. He could have accepted that slavery was just the Egyptian way. He could have lived comfortably while his people suffered. But something in his spirit said, "No more." And one man's righteous anger became an entire nation's liberation. You think your anger about your family's dysfunction is just emotion? No, that's holy indignation. That's the Spirit of God rising up in you saying, "This ends here. This stops now. This dies with me." You're not the echo of their pain. You're the punctuation mark that ends the sentence and starts the new paragraph. Every addiction that tried to claim you but couldn't, that as evidence. Every destructive pattern that attempted to capture you but failed, that's proof. Every generational curse that reached for you but came up empty-handed, that's the fingerprint of divine protection. Isaiah 54:17 declares, "No weapon formed against you shall prosper." But here's what most people miss. That's not just protection for you personally, that's protection for your purpose. God wasn't just preserving your life, He was preserving your mission, your assignment to be the generational dam that stops the flood of destruction. You are the generational dam. You are the one hell fears because you stayed. When addiction called your name, you answered with sobriety. When dysfunction knocked on your door, you responded with healing. When the same demons that destroyed your ancestors came hunting for you, they found something they'd never encountered before, someone who knew their true identity. But here's where it gets dangerous for the enemy. It's not just that you broke free, it's that your freedom is contagious. Your healing creates a ripple effect that travels both forward and backward through your bloodline. Your victory doesn't just save you, it liberates your children, your grandchildren, and yes, even the memory of those who came before. 2 Corinthians 5:17 says, "Therefore, if anyone is in Christ, he is a new creation. Old things have passed away. Behold, all things have become new." But in the original Greek, new creation means something that has never existed before. You're not just a reformed version of your family's dysfunction. You are something that has never been seen in your bloodline before. That's why the warfare has been so intense around your life. That's why the attacks have been so personal, so vicious, so relentless. Hell knew what you carried before you did. They saw the dam builder in the infant. They recognized the curse breaker in the child. They felt the chain shatterer in the teenager who refused to follow the family pattern. And now, in this season of your life, when others want to write you off as too old, too tired, too late, God is saying the opposite. He's saying you're finally ready. Ready to walk in the fullness of why you were preserved. Ready to step into the authority your survival has earned you. Ready to be the interruption your bloodline has been praying for. Your grandmother's prayers that seemed to bounce off heaven's ceiling, you're the answer. Your mother's tears that fell like rain on barren ground, you're the harvest. Every ancestor who cried out for deliverance but died waiting, you're their vindication. But here's the urgency you need to feel in your bones. Time is running out. Not your time, but the time for this evil pattern to continue. Every day you hesitate is another day the enemy gets to whisper lies. You're just like them. You'll never break free. You're destined to repeat their mistakes. Those are lies from the father of lies. You are nothing like them. You are the God-appointed, heaven-ordained, Holy Spirit, empowered interruption that ends their story and begins yours. If you feel the legacy shifting under your feet, if you sense the generational tide turning, if you know in your spirit that you are the one who breaks the chain type, it ends with me. Because, chosen one, your bloodline hasn't just been waiting for healing, it's been waiting for you, the dam, the interruption, the period at the end of a very long, very painful sentence. But what happens when a dam finally breaks open? What happens when someone who's been holding back generational pain finally lets the healing flow? What happens when heaven's interruption finally steps into their full authority and shows the world what redemption looks like in human form? Beloved, chosen one, as we reach the end of this sacred journey together, I need you to carry 3 eternal truths with you like precious stones in your heart. First, remember this. You were never just surviving, you were being selected. Every hardship, every trial, every moment you felt forgotten was God's way of preparing you for an assignment so significant that it required decades of divine preparation. Your pain wasn't punishment, it was preparation for your purpose. Second, you are the interruption hell fears most. Every generational curse, every family pattern, every cycle of defeat stops with you, not because you're perfect, but because you're positioned. You carry the authority to rewrite your family's story for the next 1,000 years. Third, your scars are your credentials. What the enemy meant to destroy you with, God is about to use to heal others. Your testimony isn't just your story, it's someone else's lifeline. But hear me clearly, dear one, you are not walking this path alone. Right now, as you sit there feeling the weight of this calling, know that the Creator of the universe is moving on your behalf. He's opening doors you haven't even approached yet. He's preparing divine connections you haven't met. He's orchestrating breakthrough you can't yet imagine. And beyond God's presence, you have a family right here. Look at these comments. Feel these hearts connecting. You've found your tribe, thousands of chosen ones just like you, carrying the same fire, fighting the same battles, walking the same narrow road that leads to supernatural impact. We see you. We understand you. We will stand with you in prayer. Let me ask you this final question, and let it settle deep in your spirit. Now that you know why God chose you, now that you understand your true identity as His interruption in this generation, what will you do with this revelation? Before I release you into your destiny, join me in this prayer. Close your eyes, place your hand on your heart, and let me speak over your life with the authority of someone who has walked this path. Almighty God, Father of lights, Ancient of days, I come before your throne, carrying every precious soul who has heard this message tonight. Lord, they've felt different their whole lives. They've carried burdens too heavy for human shoulders. They've endured attacks that would have destroyed lesser vessels. But you have been with them through every valley, every storm, every dark night of the soul. Father, I pray for divine awakening over their lives right now. Open their eyes to see what you've always seen. Silence every voice of doubt that whispers they're not enough. Break every chain of generational bondage that has held their family captive. Let this be the generation where everything changes. For those who are weary, breathe supernatural strength into their bones. For those who are broken, pour your healing oil over every wound. For those who feel forgotten, remind them that their names are engraved on the palms of your hands. For those who feel alone, surround them with your presence and connect them with others who share their calling. Lord, I decree and declare that their season of hiding is over. Their time of preparation is complete. Release them into the fullness of their purpose. Give them boldness to speak, wisdom to lead, and love to heal the broken places they encounter. Let their lives become living testimonies of your faithfulness. And Father, let this awakening ripple out. Let their transformation touch their families, their communities, their cities. Use their obedience to set captives free. Let their courage inspire others to step into their own callings. May their legacy echo through eternity. In the mighty name of Jesus, who was chosen before the foundation of the world and chose us in Him, I seal this prayer. Let your will be done in their lives. Amen. Now, chosen one, I want to hear from you. In the comments below, share what God spoke to your heart tonight. Tell us what shifted in your spirit. Ask us to pray for specific areas of your life where you need breakthrough. This community will surround you with intercession and encouragement. And please share this message with someone who needs to hear it. There's a family member, a friend, a co-worker who's been feeling that same stirring, that same divine discontent. They need to know they're not alone. They need to understand they're chosen too. If you've been blessed by this word, if your spirit has been awakened to new possibilities, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. This isn't just a channel, this is a movement of chosen ones rising up to fulfill their divine assignments. Every week, We're going deeper into the mysteries of your calling, unpacking the authority of your identity, and building a community where wounded healers become world changers. Thank you for staying with me through this entire journey. Thank you for having the courage to believe that maybe, just maybe, your story isn't over. Thank you for being willing to consider that your greatest pain might become your most powerful ministry. The world is waiting to see what God looks like when He moves through someone who has been tested by fire and refined by trial. They're waiting to witness what happens when a chosen one finally remembers who they are. Go in peace, but more than peace, go in power. Go in the unshakable knowledge that you are loved, you are chosen, and you are not alone. Your assignment awaits, and heaven is cheering you on.